Okay, hey fourth graders, welcome back. This is our lesson for today. This is on page 230, I believe 232 in your math workbook, okay? Today our skill is going to be multiplying a fraction by a whole number. And we're going to be using this recipe up here. So find page 232 in your math workbook and we'll work through this together. Suma and her sister Pooja are baking 12 blueberry wheat muffins for breakfast. The recipe lists the following ingredients: 1 cup of white flour, 1/2 cup whole wheat flour, 2 teaspoons baking powder, 3/4 cups blueberries, 1/4 teaspoon salt, 1 egg, 1/2 cup skim milk, 2/3 cup honey, 1/4 cup cooking oil, and 3/8 teaspoon cinnamon. So the directions say to solve the number stories in the space below each problem. Use pictures or equations to show what you did to find your answers. And we'll go through these first two, and then we'll have to scroll up and down to see what they are. But it says that the sisters want to triple the recipe. If the sisters want to triple the recipe, what does it mean if we triple something? We're making it 3 times. So that's going to be our whole number. In problem A, or number 1A, it says, how many teaspoons of baking powder do they need now? So let's go back up here, let's find baking powder. And I see 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Scroll back down. This one isn't going to be so much a fraction. Every one recipe needs 2 teaspoons of baking powder. We're making 3 recipes. So what do we need to multiply that by? The 3. You go ahead and solve that. Let me give you a few seconds here. 3, 2, 1. 2 times 3 is 6. And they've got our label up here so we can write our 6 there. 6 teaspoons. Now this is where we're going to get into our actual skill for the day. It says how many teaspoons of salt do they need? Well, we got to go up there and we got to find teaspoons of salt. I see 1/4 teaspoon of salt. What we do in this situation is we first put down our fraction. We need 1/4 teaspoon of salt for every recipe that we make. We're making 3. Now we've done this before. We actually did this in our math boxes in the example that I did this morning for you in the review. You take your whole number, but whenever you have a whole number, you're still multiplying. We put that whole number in the numerator and put 1 in the denominator. 3 over 1. It's like having 3 wholes. Okay? And then multiplying fractions is actually really, really easy. You just go numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. So in this case it would be 1 times 3 is going to get you the numerator, 4 times 1 is going to get you the denominator. Once you hit pause, solve those, and then once you have those written in the numerator and denominator, then hit play again and we'll go over it. Okay. So hopefully you got this solved. 1 times 3 is 3. Well, that's that goofy spot in my smartboard that doesn't write quite right. So I'm going to write it over here a little bit. 1 times 3 is 3. And 4 times 1, 3, 2, 1 is 4. So how many teaspoons would you need? 3/4. So now let's look at letter C. I'm going to erase that. How many cups of whole wheat flour do they need now? We go up here. We find whole wheat flour, 1/2 cup. So we come down here. The fraction that we're working with is 1/2. What are we doing with the recipe? We're tripling it. So that's going to be multiplying times 3. But we don't just write a 3 down because that could be a little confusing if I just have that. What we need to do is we need to write that 3 as a fraction. 3 as a fraction is 3 over 1. And then we go ahead and solve that. Again, multiply numerator and denominator. Once you go ahead and hit pause, solve that, figure out the fraction, and then hit play again and we'll go over it. Alright, so hopefully you've solved this on your own. 1 times 3 is 3. And 2 times 1 is 2. Now you could write that. You could write that we need 3 halves cups. But that's going to make this problem hard. This is an improper fraction, and I've talked to you guys about when you have an improper fraction, you can make it into a mixed number. And the way that you do that is by dividing. This literally says 3 divided by 2. That's what a fraction is. It's telling you to take 3 and divide it by 2. So we're going to put our 3 in here, we're going to put our 2 out here. It probably didn't need to be that long in my partial quotients division. And what we're thinking is, how many 2's can go into 3? And 2 times 1. 2 times 1 is 2. It goes in the middle. Multiply your outsides, your divisor, times the 1 out here to get that 2, and you subtract. 3 minus 2 is 1. When your remainder is smaller than your divisor, you are done. And the way that we would go about writing our answer, I'm going to use a little different color so you can see it with the red. This is your whole number. This is your numerator. The remainder becomes your numerator, and your divisor becomes your denominator. 1 and 1/2. So this is 3 halves, or 1 and 1/2. Just dividing the improper fraction to make it a mixed number. So, letter D is one that we did last time that we actually had class, and we talked about it a little bit, but some people were gone and some people may not remember, and that's okay. It was new. So let's pretend we had a number line. There's my goofy spot in the smartboard, as you remember. Between what two whole numbers does your answer to problem 1C lie? So they want to know between what two whole numbers is 1 and 1/2. So we'll make that 0, we'll make that 1, 2, 3, and so on. And when you look at 1 1/2, it has one whole. It's bigger than one whole. It's got one whole. If I draw a picture of it, there's 1 and 1/2. It's got one whole, but not quite 2. So 1 and 1/2 on the number line would be like right here. It's between 1 and 2. See how that works? This tells you which number it's bigger than, the whole number that you have. And then the number that it's smaller than is just the next number on the number line. It's actually pretty easy, but sometimes it can be a little confusing to think about. All right, we're going to go on to page 233. It's the next page in your math journal. It's pretty much the same, except they're going to give us a little bit different scenario. This time, Suma and Pooja, they're going to bake 48 muffins instead of 12. Well, a regular recipe makes 12. Last time they told us that was tripling. They wanted to triple the recipe. We have to figure out how many recipes they're making, how many times they're making 12. There's a couple ways to do that. One would be to think 12 times something equals 48. Another option would be to take 48 using partial quotients and divide by 12. I don't care which way you use. You got to use whatever is more comfortable for you. But what I do want you to do is to take a moment, pause the video, and solve one of these two to figure out what our whole number is that we're going to need to multiply fractions by. So go ahead and hit pause, solve one of those. When you're ready, hit play and we'll go over. Okay, so hopefully you've solved these. I'm going to go through the partial quotients first. What I know is that I always tell you, can you do 10? And no, you can't, because 12 times 10 is going to be 120. It's too big. If you try 5, that also isn't going to work, because 12 times 5 is half of 120, which is 60. It's too big. So maybe what you could try, if you're stuck, is 2, because that's something easy. Do something that you know. At least get going on something. 12 times 2 is 24. It's just doubling that. And you subtract. 8 minus 4 is 4, and 4 minus 2 is 2. Hey, I already know 12 times what is 24. It's another 2. 12 times 2 is 24, and you subtract. And your answer would be 4. I do the same thing with this. If it were me, I'd probably think about it something along the lines of doing like 12 times 2 is 24. Okay, I know that I can do another 2. Oh, you know what happened there? Yeah. Perfect. That means that 12 times 4 equals 48. So anyway, the number that we're multiplying is going to be 4. So let's take a look now at this first problem. They want to know how many cups of blueberries they're going to need. Now, I can't look back at my page, so I've got my book over here just off screen. But when I look, I see that it is 3/4 cups of blueberries. Make sure I'm right. Yep, 3/4 cups of blueberries. So our fraction that we're multiplying by here is 3/4. And we're going to take that times 4. And remember, we're not just going to write 4 like that. We're not going to write it as one number. We're going to write it as a fraction. When we write it as a fraction, we have to put 4 in the numerator, 1 in our denominator. And now it's just simply multiplying across. Take a moment to go ahead and solve that. Pause me, solve that, hit play when you're ready to go. All right, so multiplying our numerators. 3 times 4. 3, 2, 1. You should have gotten 12 there. And 4 times 1 is 4. I think we should probably just get into the habit of when there's an improper fraction. Now, you could put 12/4 here, but I think when there's an improper fraction, we need to get in the habit of making it a mixed number, which is where I would probably take the 12. Well, I would take the 4 and 12, and I'd go 12 divided by 4. Some of you might already have the answer for that, but what you're doing here is you're just trying to think, what times 4 will get me 12? Go ahead and think about that. Pause me if you'd like and solve it. What you should have found out is that 4 times 3 is 12. And that's exact. Now, your answer here is 3. Do you need to report this as a fraction if this is a 0? Would you go 3 and 0/4? No, you probably wouldn't go 3 and 0/4. When there's no remainder, you don't have to report that. So this is 12/4 or 3 cups. Okay, go ahead and look now for letter B. Try and figure out how many teaspoons of cinnamon are in just one recipe. I'm going to look over at my book. And I see that it is supposed to be 3/8. What do we need to multiply that by? How many recipes are we making if we need 48? We've already found that out. We know that it is 4. Got to put that over 1, 4 over 1. Go ahead and multiply to find your fraction. Okay, here we go. 3 times 4. 3, 2, 1. You already did it up here. It's 12. And 8 times 1 is 8. Again, if you write 12/8 here, that's a good answer. I don't think it's the best answer. The best answer would be to rewrite that as a mixed number. I'm going to erase this just so we have a little bit more room. We need to divide. We are doing 12 divide. Oh, I messed up. I wrote a 4 here. This should be an 8. Whoops. We're doing 12 divided by 8. So right now what we're thinking is, how many 8s can go into 12? Well, just 1. 8 times 1 is 8. If you did more than that, it would be bigger than 12, and we know we can't do that. 12 minus 8 is 4. For this one, we are going to have a fractional piece here. We have our whole number of 1. Our numerator is 4, and our denominator is 8. So you could also write 1 and 4/8. Now some of you are probably thinking, well, couldn't I put 4.5? Yeah, you could. 4.5 cup or 4.5 teaspoons would also be an acceptable answer because 4/8 is a half. Well, we got one more problem here. We got to remember that answer. Hopefully you have everything written down. Oh, yeah, we got to do the honey. Sorry, my fault. Looking at the honey, figure out how many cups of honey you're going to need. And when I look over and I find honey, I see 2/3 of a cup. Again, we're multiplying today. We're multiplying fraction and a whole number. How many recipes are they making? 4. So we put that whole number over 1. And then we multiply. Go ahead and pause me and solve that. I'm going to make sure the video is still working here. So, here we go. Let's make sure we've got the right answer here. 2 times 4 is 3, 2, 1, 8. And 3 times 1 is 3. Again, a good answer, a correct answer is 8/3 of a cup. However, that's maybe not our best answer. We need to regroup that into a mixed number. That's where we're going to go. 8 divided by 3. Because if someone asks you, and why we want to do that, what makes this easier if we do this, is because the next question is going to ask you, between which 2 whole numbers does your answer to problem 2C lie? And if you were looking for 8/3 on a number line, that's hard to find. But if we make it as a mixed number, it's going to be easier. So we're thinking, how many 3's go into 8? Okay, 2, because 3 times 2 is 6. And we want to get as close as we can in here without going over. 8 minus 6 is 2. Again, when your remainder is smaller than your divisor, you are done. Finding out our answer here, your whole number is 2. Numerator 2 and your denominator 3. So 8/3 or 2 and 2/3. Now, take a look at this number. What this is asking is, what 2 whole numbers does this go between? Go ahead, pause me, give it a shot. You should have 2 numbers. And once you have that, hit play and I'll explain the answer. Okay, if we make a number line here, and again 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we have 2 cups of honey. So it's bigger than 2. It would look like this. 1 whole cup, the second whole cup, and the third cup has got 2/3 of it filled in. It's bigger than 2, but it's not yet 3. It's missing that from being 3. So this would fall somewhere right in here, which means it's between 2 and 3. Remember, this gives you the first number. The whole number you have, it's bigger than 2, but it's not 3. That's kind of the way that you have to think about it. All right, so that's multiplying fractions by a whole number, just kind of the basics, the first part of it. Now what I'm going to want you to do is, just like yesterday, if you have time, go ahead and do page 231. That is your math boxes. In number 1, you shouldn't need a protractor because we know what kind of angle that whole thing is. Write me an equation and figure out what angle R is. Number 2 is exactly what we were working on today, just a little different scenario. In box 3, you're subtracting fractions. In box 4, you probably aren't going to be able to draw that angle unless you have a protractor. But you should be able to tell me whether a 65-degree angle is obtuse or acute. In number 5, you're just doing partial quotients division. And in number 6, if Ray and Jenny are sharing clay and Ray uses 5/8 and Jenny uses 3/8, what would be the number model for how much clay they used altogether? And I will go over your math boxes tomorrow with you. I'll have another video. All right. Good luck, and we'll be seeing you soon again.